In his chosen profession as a pathologist, Las Vegas resident Robert Rock Belliveau has spent nearly 4 decades peering into microscopes, amazed by the wonderful dynamic world of cellular structure and organization. He was so enthralled by this magical microcosm, his daily 9 to 5 didn't provide enough hours for this exploration. So he set up a lab of his own at home and nightly immersed himself in researching life at its most fundamental level. Over time, the glorious beauty of these layers of life began to capture more of his attention, so his endeavors gradually moved from the purely scientific into the realm of art.
I find it very interesting. It's very beautiful. It's a nice melding of science and art, which a lot of folks don't think those two disciplines can necessarily correspond, but of course they can. And what I find so interesting about it is he would put the juices of rhubarb at the same time on various slides and incubate them over the same period of time, and yet they all look totally different from slide to slide, even though they came from the same fruit or vegetable, and even though they had the same incubation period under the same conditions.
In order to share the results of these discoveries with the world, Belliveau invested in some rather sophisticated imaging equipment and began making massive prints of these microscopic images, many of which are now featured in a show filling the Big Springs Gallery here at the Springs Preserve.
The exhibit kind of looks at two different things. For one, we take a look using the polarizing microscope that focus in on parts of plants. So for example, the exterior of cucumbers. You may not realize it, but the little bumps and ridges have a purpose. So maybe it helps to prevent pests that might feed on cucumbers. And then other ones might be a close-up of a tomato seed or the inside of some red pepper. And then the second part of the exhibit, really the bulk of the exhibit, looks at the idea of self-organization. So the artist found that if he cut fruits and vegetables and left the juices pretty much at room temperature on slides, over a period of time, he would find that crystals within the juices would self-organize over time. So a lot of them might be an 8-9 month period, and they might go from little specks and they start to kind of come together and basically over time self-organize into these beautiful abstract shapes.
While many people take images through microscopes, Belliveau's training and experience as a pathologist introduced him to a process whereby he passes light through a polarizing filter, which coaxes out very specific frequencies, revealing spectacular colors and shapes otherwise unseen.
This is what they look like under a polarizing microscope, and under each particular image we indicate its magnification as well as its light source. So there really isn't much manipulation of the photos going on. What he sees under the slide is what we're seeing here.
Once visitors see the astonishing amount of activity taking place at the molecular level within very common items we handle and consume on a daily basis, it's not surprising they'll probably come away with a renewed interest in examining their macro world in a more micro way.
Years ago, I had an old roommate in college that would say something like, "Slow down, stop and look at the flowers." And whenever I go on vacation myself, I'll oftentimes spend time not looking at the large picture, but kind of looking at the little things. What is going on in this weird spider web off at the corner? What's under this rock at the shore? Is there some cool critter or something like that? To me, that's as interesting as the big picture, these large monuments, these large mountains, because a lot of people tend to miss those things.
Belliveau's work proves there's more to this world than meets the eye, and this exhibit encourages visitors to emulate his process by taking a twofold interactive approach to investigating this majestic microscopic world.
You know, there's two ways to look at this particular exhibit. One, when you first walk in, beautiful pieces of abstract art, and then if you dial it down and take a look at the label copy, we talk about some of the science behind how the art was made, as well as what's going on with the plant, and in some cases the insects that are preying upon the plant, and even how we as human beings interact with the plant. So there's a lot of different things that we're talking about in the exhibit, and I suspect that when visitors come in, they're going to take away many different things from it, depending on what they're interested in.